All right, this is my final presentation for the UX data analysis for comparing syllabi. My name is Will McCoy, and I will be giving the presentation. So before we get into the analysis, we first have to understand what UX eye tracking actually is. So the first thing is that it is a computer-generated program that follows a user's eyes, and it shows points using colors. The redder the spot, the longer the fixation. As you can see in the image to the right, that all the little spots on the website for Wikipedia, the redder the spot, the longer that the user looked at that certain point. What this can tell us is that they were focusing mostly on the picture of the woman there, the bio for the car, and some other features like the sidebar. As for the summary for the data itself that I was provided, it was broken up into two different categories: traditional, which was represented by a 0 as the ID, and visually rich, which is represented by a 1. But I will be calling it the visual approach for the purpose of the analysis. The first picture on your left is represented for the traditional, and the picture on the right is for visually rich. There were three main points that we were told to look at, and it was the fixation points, the time spent for the entire syllabus, and it was divided by each page. So it was divided by page 1 and page 2. Overall, the traditional had more fixations and time spent more than the visually rich, which I thought was surprising given that there's more to look at in the visually rich one. And the traditional was better based off of the data that I found for relaying the information and for making sure that students and readers are focused on that. The method that I chose to do is to take the totals and the averages for both the fixations and the time spent. And then I made bar graphs for comparison by the pages and also by the syllabus type. We will look more at the graphs later for the evidence portion of the analysis. The table down there, that is how I relayed the data. It shows both page 1 and page 2 time spent and fixations, as well as the totals and averages for each as well. First off, for the evidence, the traditional had more fixations and time spent. The traditional had more time spent for the fixations, which means that it implies that there was more focus. As you can see in the chart down there, that the total time in seconds, the traditional had 7,937 compared to visually only having 5,787, meaning that even though the total fixations was around equal, there was more time actually spent on those fixation points for the traditional, implying that there was more focus. Page 2 had more fixations and time spent overall. I believe there was more information on page 2, meaning that that would explain why the graphs were more towards page 2, and that is shown in the graphs below. So now looking at the average fixations and the average time per second, this is averaging between both page 1 and page 2, so we can get an overall feel for how the users were actually reading it. Even though that the average time spent was similar, the total time is more evident. Going back to what I said earlier with the total times, the average, even though that they're similar, I believe that the total time is more important, because if you're trying to relay focus on a syllabus, you would need to focus more on the time rather than the fixations. And those are shown in the graph below. So let's sum up what we have done so far. And so I used the UX eye track data, which is used to determine the focus on the syllabus. It was the traditional syllabus that was more effective for focusing readers. And a couple of suggestions that I would like to put is, put more information on page 2. And for later on, if you want more people to understand which syllabus is better, I would create a template based on the traditional, so that way the technology office would be able to give that to professors. That way they would have a general idea about what makes students more focused. And I would also conduct a survey showing each the visually rich and the traditional, because you really need to get feedback from the students as well, or the readers, or whoever is deciding to read this, to make sure that they thoroughly understand the information on it and about opinions about which one they would prefer. That is my presentation. Thank you for listening and for being engaged in this. And any questions for me, you can email me. You can contact me at 704-956-6271. Email me at wmccoy4@elon.edu. Thank you once again for paying attention.